There is a story in Greek mythology, and don't tell me you weren't expecting this. There is a story in Greek mythology about a young hero named Hercules who dreams that he has come to a fork in a road. Standing at this juncture is a god who says to him, "What's up, Herc? Because you are such a promising young demigod, I, a god, have taken the time out of my busy schedule to offer you a choice between the two paths behind me. Now, Hercules, the path on the left is pretty sweet. You head down that path, and I will guarantee you the safest, easiest, most enjoyable life imaginable. You will be totally happy. You'll live to a ripe old age, and you'll never suffer again as long as you live. On the other hand, this path on the right will lead you to nothing but trials and suffering. Choose this road and you'll lose everything you love. You'll face impossible foes and you'll die tragically, but you'll be remembered as a hero who will inspire generations to come." So Hercules thinks about his choice, then squares his shoulders and marches off into the trials and suffering. The story that follows is truly incredible. The teenage hero grows up and astonishes the world by doing battle with the most ferocious of enemies, whether he's outwitting a god, slaying a monster, or even diverting the course of 2 rivers to clean up 30 years' buildup of cow manure. By the time of his death, Hercules will forever be known for accomplishing the impossible. And yet this most heroic of heroes would never have been a hero at all if he hadn't chosen the more difficult path. So, I don't know about everybody else up here. I certainly didn't make any kind of divine choice before our freshman year. And yet, I think the process of becoming an adult over the last 4 years has led many of us to join Hercules in staring impossibility in the face. For one thing, I think many of our freshman selves imagined the political world as a place where adults had their problems, but where they at least interacted within some sphere of civility and normalcy. However, by our sophomore year and the conclusion of the 2016 election cycle, it seemed impossible that our government could ever escape from the divisive and hateful rhetoric that had threatened the very institution of democracy. But to some small extent, that was a problem we could ignore. After all, we knew that Friends Seminary would remain an island of stability no matter how troubled the rest of the world became. What we didn't realize as sophomores is that no community is immune to change. Leaders retire. Administrators move to new cities. Sometimes vital members of a community unexpectedly encounter grave personal issues, and sometimes all 3 happen at once. Consequently, after a sophomore year filled with tumultuous global events, we began our junior year surrounded by adults who were just as strong and kind and supportive as before, but who were almost entirely unfamiliar. And meanwhile, these adults found themselves thrown headfirst into a community rocked by scandal, conflict, and confusion. It seemed impossible that Friends would ever again represent the refuge from turmoil it once was. And then, on top of the real and serious problems facing the world and our school, we found ourselves faced with our own piles of cow manure in the form of college applications and standardized testing. Once we understood that our entire future lay behind an impenetrable wall of stressful yet meaningless tasks, it seemed impossible not only to solve the larger issues we faced, but even to find time to worry about them. It was at this moment that I think many of us began to wonder, is this what growing up feels like? If I learned anything from the chaos of our junior year, it was that giving up on things is frighteningly easy. It's easy because after the world has disappointed you once, rebuilding your belief in yourself and in your community seems like yet another impossible task. It's so much easier to just stop caring and to let cynicism take the wheel. What changed my mind was a basketball team. It is the morning of December 28th, 2018. As the manager of the boys varsity basketball team, I am keeping score for the Cactus Jam tournament in Phoenix, Arizona, and we are about to face the most terrifying opponent imaginable, a public high school from rural Ohio, with a talent pool of over 1,300 students and a committed D1 athlete as team captain. I was scared. After all, I was rooting for a young team from a small Quaker high school in New York City, and we were competing in a tournament that no team in Friends history had ever won. Even before the first whistle, I was convinced that we couldn't possibly walk away with a victory. The world just didn't work that way. What I saw instead on that chilly morning was nothing short of incredible. You see, I hadn't counted on the fact that our opponents from Brecksville, Ohio, believed they could get away with choosing the easy path. As they saw it, they wouldn't even have to try to beat a bunch of Quakers from Lower Manhattan. They were completely thrown when they stepped onto the court and saw the entire Friends bench on their feet and screaming their heads off out of pride for their team. By the end of the fourth quarter, the whole team was hoarse and red-faced, but no one cared because their belief in their fellow Owls was so strong. And because we had just secured a 4-point victory and won the Cactus Jam Championship for the first time in school history. I wasn't sure I had ever felt prouder to be a Friends student. The fact is that this wasn't the most talented team in the history of high school basketball. It wasn't the biggest, with the exception of our center. What made this group of guys special was their belief in each other. It was precisely this belief that taught the least athletic guy in the school a profound lesson about what people could accomplish together. Of course, I don't expect everyone in this room to be as moved as I am by a bunch of basketball players, but soon after the season ended, I realized that the lesson I learned from them is one I could have learned at any point in high school from any of the most remarkable group of people I have ever known, the class of 2019. You see, among the 71 graduating seniors before you sits one soon-to-be Eagle Scout. 45 varsity athletes who together led 5 different teams to compete in state championships. 21 musicians and ensembles here at Friends, including 13 singers and the best high school choral program any of us has ever seen. Actors, choreographers, journalists, visual artists, and creative writers. Designers who have launched products in the clothing market or on the App Store. Young women and non-binary individuals who have defied society's expectations in order to pursue their dreams in math, science, and technology. Students who have conquered crippling physical and mental health issues to graduate hand in hand with their fellow seniors. And even if we don't all see ourselves reflected in these more traditional measures of success, every one of us deserves to be proud of surviving 4 years of English essays, travel narratives, calculus tests, and never knowing what's in the box. And every one of you will leave Friends having changed me, and I hope the entire community, for the better. Simply put, I refuse to believe that we have accomplished all these amazing things just by being talented. At one point or another, every single one of us has had to believe in something to make that something come to fruition. And that's not an easy choice to make. After all, every time we choose to believe in a person or a team or a community, we risk bitter disappointment when things inevitably don't go the way we hope they will. But while cynicism numbs the pain of that disappointment, it doesn't make us any smarter or more mature. It just renders us incapable of accomplishing all the amazing things that every one of us has to be proud of. So, class of 2019, here is my challenge to us. As Americans and as Friends students, we have already seen events that have shaken our local and national communities, and I have no doubt we will see more. But we have also borne witness to the incredible things Friends students can accomplish just by cheering relentlessly for one another, even when faced with an impossible task. So what if, instead of responding to life's turmoil by walling ourselves up with cynicism, we challenged ourselves to keep the faith our freshman selves had in the world? Maybe growing up doesn't mean rejecting our childhood innocence, but learning to keep believing in the impossible even when life doesn't go as planned. You see, maybe the world isn't better than we think it is. But just like Hercules, by choosing the harder path, by making the incredibly difficult decision to believe in ourselves and in each other, every one of us can be heroic enough to make the world just a little bit better, one basketball game at a time. Thank you.